Can God prove that he exists, or is that just too much to ask for? Does he even understand the process? I don't think so after watching this, and neither will you. It's no wonder we spend so much time laughing at these religious idiots because they bring it on themselves. So let's do some more of that. Won't that be fun? Finally, we're at the last video for God trying to easily, in all caps, convince atheists that God is real. And so far, it's been singularly unimpressive, and if you think that's going to turn around in the end, yeah, try again. This might be the dumbest part yet, but it's hard to gauge because the stupidity in all of this is just overwhelming. Therefore, let's get into this once again, with the realization that this is going to be the end of this video, but the religious never stop making more. They're just driving themselves out of business, and that's a very, very good thing.
But does the Big Bang support the idea of God's existence and the Bible being divinely inspired?
Not remotely. Oh, I'm sure he'll read into things because this is what the religious always do. But it sounds like God to me. Yeah, I don't care. You haven't demonstrated your imaginary friend is real yet. Come back when you can do that. It's going to be a long wait, I'm predicting. We might want to take up a hobby. Oh, right, laughing at you people. We already do that. Hobby done. Because none of this is at all original. It's been tried and it's failed before, and the religious just aren't bright enough to figure that out. If we had to wait for something rational and original from the religious, I'd never make another video again. If the religious had to wait until they had something that wasn't already soundly debunked and had evidence to back it up, they would never make a video either. I think that would actually make a much better world, don't you? Let me know what you think down in the comments.
The answer is no.
That's actually surprising. Since we know the Big Bang happened, after all, we've got tons and tons and tons of evidence to support it, then I guess that does away with your silly imaginary friend, doesn't it? Thanks for coming, everybody. Christianity is defeated. Don't forget to tip your waiter. Bye, all! It would be so nice if that was actually the case, wouldn't it? Too bad the religious don't work that way.
Saint John Paul II warned against using the Big Bang Theory to prove God's existence. In 1985, he mentioned that seeking scientific proof of God would be a mistake.
Because you can't do it. You need to, but you can't. This is why religion is dying, because it has nothing of any demonstrable substance to say. It just makes claims, but it can't show that any of those claims make any rational sense. It can't show that they are ever backed up by any demonstrable evidence. It's just what they want to be true, but wanting doesn't mean it actually is. That's why they're never ever talking to us, even in a video like this that says they're talking to us. They only talk to each other because only another delusional moron could ever take any of this stuff seriously. You ought to be able to back up your claims with evidence, and they're not remotely interested. This is really why, the more that I do this, the less interested I am in Catholic theology, because Catholics are probably less interested in reality than anyone else, except perhaps the most hardcore of fundamentalists. They only care what their stupid church says, which means absolutely nothing if the things that their church says aren't true. They're not willing to put any of that to the test as they should. Why? Because they're all just a bunch of idiots, aren't they?
As it would bring God down to the level of worldly beings. He emphasized that science has limits and cannot confirm or deny God's existence, since God is beyond the material world.
That's your claim, at least. How about you back that up with something more than your own flapping lips? They can't, of course, and this is why I keep making it a point that they're not even trying. I might not say if they made an effort to back any of this up objectively. Even if they didn't succeed, at least they would have made a good faith effort. I have some small measure of respect for them, but since they don't, I just can't bring myself to respect them at all. These are actual real-world claims that have to be justified with verifiable evidence, and they are not making any effort whatsoever to do so. I just have to have faith. Why? Why would anybody in their right mind rely on faith? Because it makes me happy. Now, you remember, this whole video is supposed to be about how easy, in all caps, it is to prove God to an atheist. Has he done anything remotely of the sort? No, not even close. Everything he said has been just statements of faith and wishful thinking, and we expect more than that. He was never serious about that title to begin with. It's just filling his comments with people who are laughing at his ass. He not only doesn't know what atheism is, he doesn't know how to rationally talk to anyone, because his side doesn't care about rationality, and he only cares about his own side. Sad, huh?
This doesn't mean that scientists who believe in God are wrong, but their belief comes from faith or philosophical arguments, not from scientific methods.
Which makes them idiots. Of course, that's something else we've pointed out many times before. Religious scientists use compartmentalization to keep their rational minds away from their religious beliefs. If you hear religious scientists talking about their faith, their entire demeanor changes when they get to religion, because they have to switch off the rational part of their brains entirely so they can say anything at all about their irrational faith. It's like a split brain patient, right? One side doesn't have access to what the other side is doing, and that's not something to be proud of. Oh, and one more thing that I wanted to bring up here, but this channel, at least at the time that I'm writing this, it has 105,000 subscribers. This video has 889 views. Now that's kind of sad, right? I have about 1% of their subscribers, maybe 2%. Who knows where it will be when this video actually comes out, but my videos mostly get more views than his do. Keep in mind that as I'm finishing writing the last video in this series, their video has been out for 6 months. I get more views in a day or two than he's gotten in 6 months. The people who subscribe to these channels, they don't actually care to consume the content, and we've noted this many times before. Why is that? If anyone thinks they know, let me know down in the comments, because honestly, I just don't get it.
As particle physicist Stephen Barr puts it, while the Big Bang Theory may be correct, it doesn't necessarily settle the question of whether the universe truly had a beginning. There is a possibility that the explosion 14 billion years ago was just the start of a certain part of the universe, not the entire universe. Over the years, various scenarios and theories, where the Big Bang isn't the ultimate beginning, have been suggested.
Sorry, I don't buy it. The Big Bang wasn't an explosion. Anyone who refers to it as an explosion is an idiot. It was an expansion. Rent a clue. Now, I agree on some of that because I've already made that argument. The Big Bang started from pre-existing stuff. You can't just have heat and density with nothing to begin with. Therefore, there goes Kalam, right? It's just a nonsensical argument, as I brought up way back in the first response video to this video, but it is one of the most common religious apologetic claims around. Why? Because it sounds good to people who have no actual information or interest in reality. It gets them where they want to go, and that's all they care about. That doesn't make any of it true or anything, and it's the truth that actually matters, but that's really all they're after, is coddling their own fee-fees. Well, here's a news flash for you people. It should matter, although to the religious we all know that it doesn't. This is all faith and fee-fees, and that is utterly childish. Not that these people care, because they are, let's be honest, immature children. Maybe it's time to get a grip on reality and realize that what you believe doesn't matter if it's not actually true. And I just don't think that's going to happen, do you?
Were you aware that the Bible sets forth a test to demonstrate its inspiration and establish the existence of God?
Were you aware that it does absolutely nothing of the sort? Empty claims in a book of mythology, they don't matter. That is only going to impress people who already believe entirely on faith, and that's not us. Remember, this is supposed to easily, in all caps, and yes, I'm going to keep saying that, but it's supposed to easily prove God to an atheist, and he hasn't gotten anywhere remotely close. Granted, he has no clue what atheism is. He, like most other theists, likely assumes that everyone is just like he is. Everyone is looking for his imaginary friend because they're just all desperate to believe. And we've seen that from many other apologists over the years, and it wasn't impressive then, and it's no more impressive now. We are not like you are. We don't want your God unless you can demonstrate that your God is actually real in some verifiable, evidence-based way. They've got a ton of excuses for why we laugh at them, but the real reason is because they have nothing to say of any demonstrable substance. They just really want to believe, and atheists don't. We just want to know the truth in a verifiable way that we can know it. And it's too bad that the religious have none of that, right?
This argument and evidence for God's existence are present in specific passages within the Bible. You may say to yourself, how can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord?
You'd have to prove that there is a Lord first. As usual, he's just assuming that it's true, but atheists are not going to do that. We expect you to be able to back up your claims with evidence, and, yeah, that's not going to happen, is it? So I'll just let him get back to his Bible reading, but we don't value the Bible at all because it hasn't been demonstrated to be true. Reading to us out of your big book of nonsense means no more than if we read to you out of Harry Potter. You're just wasting our time, and that's all this video has been so far. A gigantic waste of time. Anyhow, go ahead, but it's just not going to get you anywhere.
If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message that the Lord has not spoken. That prophet has spoken presumptuously. Do not be afraid of him.
We're not afraid of you, and all you've done this entire video is presume that you're right without being able to prove that you're right. Now, I'm guessing that he's going to try to use prophecy, which is painfully simple to debunk, but at least he's trying to do something in the last 2 minutes of his video, which is more than I can say about the first 10. Yet, he doesn't understand that this isn't going to impress atheists either, because we're not presuming that his imaginary friend is real. Even if there was a demonstrable prophecy anywhere in the Bible, which there isn't, but let's just say there is for shits and giggles, that doesn't prove God done it. That's an entirely separate claim that he'd have to use evidence to back up, and we all know he can't do that. So this isn't going to work for you either, not that we should be at all surprised. How can these people be this dumb? Someone please explain.
Present your case, says the Lord. You idols, tell us what is going to happen. Declare to us the things to come. Tell us what the future holds, so we may know you are gods.
So, how exactly do you explain all the crap in the Bible that never happened at all? You know, Matthew 16:28. Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. No, they'd rather just make up excuses for why that one doesn't count, because otherwise they'd have to admit that Jesus wasn't worthwhile, and they can't have that. Because that's how this stuff always works, doesn't it? They're just a bunch of hypocrites, because what else can they do? What else indeed? Well, they could, I don't know, try to be consistent, try to be honest, try not to be hypocrites. But the religious never are, right? They're too busy shucking and jiving to get to what they wish was true, to care about what is actually true. This is why my book says a thing will never impress anyone. How is this going to easily, yes, in all caps, going to prove God to an atheist when we have no reason whatsoever to believe anything in the Bible? They won't have any answers to that, so let's just move on.
The Bible's test is simple, yet it states that a message claiming to be from God should be supported by predictions about the future.
I don't believe your God is real. I have no reason to do so. There isn't a single demonstrable prophecy in the Bible or anywhere else. It's just weak sauce claims that are not specific enough to be taken seriously, and the religious just don't like that. I don't care what your book says. I care about your evidence. And you don't have any. That's the problem. You need evidence, and you have none. That's why I'm not going to be convinced by your silly book and your pathetic claims. If this is what you expect to convince atheists, then you don't have the slightest clue what the hell you're doing. Not that that's any surprise or anything because, religion, you know.
The logic behind this is that if God exists, he knows the future.
Says who? Because that's just a claim. There are tons of gods out there that are not said to know the future. But they're still supposedly gods though, right? Plus the fact that you have no way of knowing what this imaginary man in the sky you worship is actually like. These are all just empty claims. Saying, but I really like the idea, doesn't make that idea true. It's why you have to be able to take yourself completely out of the picture, and the religious can't do that, because without them, the picture doesn't even exist. This is just, but I like it. Okay, but what does that mean? Not a damn thing. So you telling me what your God is like without being able to show how you know that, without being able to demonstrate that it's actually true, that is not going to impress anyone. You still have to produce your God for independent observation so that we can test it and see what it's actually like. When do you think you're going to be able to do that? Because until you can, you've got nothing. Nothing at all.
While people can make educated guesses, consistent and accurate predictions about the future are beyond our capabilities.
Yet, your imaginary friend has made no consistently demonstrable predictions. I'm not aware of any specific prediction in the Bible that has ever demonstrably come true. Not one. Now, there are a lot of vague ones, some not even intended as prophetic, but if you squint at it just right and have a whole bunch of unjustified preconceptions, you might be able to claim that it came true, but it didn't, not demonstrably so. We can do the exact same thing out of other religious books, and, well, heck, I've seen people make the case that Gene Roddenberry was a prophet because he predicted the cell phone. I mean, he didn't. He made something that he thought looked cool on a TV show, and people watched the show, thought it was a really good idea, and then they worked to make it happen in reality. That's not a prophecy, that's inspiration. That's why any legitimate prophecy needs to be incredibly specific. Names, dates, places, things such that no person or persons can see the prophecy and work to bring it about. That's why Old Testament prophecies like Jeremiah 16:15 that said that Israel will be reborn, that means absolutely nothing. When you have millions of people reading the Bible and then working hard to make that supposed prophecy come to pass, that's not prophetic. That's bullshit. It happened because people made it happen, just like people made cell phones happen. This is just not impressive at all.
False gods, being unaware of the future, cannot make such predictions.
We have no evidence that any gods exist at all. This is just the assertion that's being made. It's why anyone claiming that Gene Roddenberry ought to be a saint, or I guess you can do it with Arthur C. Clarke, who predicted GPS and satellite TV back in 1956, that doesn't make any of it prophetic. I mean, Clarke foresaw the existence of satellites, period, back in a letter he wrote in 1945. That doesn't make him a god. It just makes him creative. It makes you people idiots. And this isn't going to convince any rational person of anything, except that you're all just a bunch of loons.
Therefore, a message can be identified as coming from God based on its ability to predict the future.
Nope, because you haven't established that any gods exist in the first place. You have something written down by ancient people, not by gods. These vague claims just so happen to come true. In a lot of cases, it wasn't even intended to be prophetic in the first place. People just read into it later on and reinterpreted it to be a prophecy. But that doesn't mean it was one, and it doesn't mean it came from any gods, much less your own. This is just reading into stuff, and it's absurdly common in religion. You haven't established that any of this actually came from any gods in the first place. You just haven't. Even if you found someone who is consistently giving accurate prophecies day in and day out, things that were very specific, that mentioned dates, times, people, etc., 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 and never got anything wrong, that doesn't mean they came from your God. You have to demonstrate that, and you're not even trying. Asserting is not proof of anything. It's just proof that you're a moron, and you really ought to knock that off.
If the message indeed predicts the future, it indicates come from God, and consequently God must exist. This serves as evidence that God is present and communicating with us. The Bible's argument for God's existence is clear and direct.
No, it's not. You're just making yourself look stupid. This is just, I believe it, so it's just gotta be true. Says who? This is the religious just assuming that everyone has the same unsupported preconceptions that they do. And we don't. This is why I keep saying that they have to walk us through the steps. First, prove that anyone has ever issued a prophecy, ever. Make sure it's impressive. It's got to be extremely specific and not fulfillable by any human or humans down the road. If you said that there would be a volcanic eruption in X place at Y time on Z date, and it would kill this many people, and it was made demonstrably 100 years or 1,000 years, whatever, before the actual event, yeah, I might be impressed. And of course, you'd have to be able to do this repeatably, because anyone can get something right once. Show me that one first. I'll wait. Then you'd have to be able to prove that this kind of prophecy came from any god. You'd have to be able to prove that gods were real first. And then, once you had established the verifiable existence of any gods, you'd have to prove that your God, your specific God, the God that you worship, exists, and that your God was demonstrably responsible for the prophecy. You can't just assume it, you can't just assert it, you have to be able to prove it. Get to work. That's the kind of thing you people would need to be able to do, and you've done absolutely nothing remotely of the sort yet.
It's great that God has shown clearly that he exists for anyone who thinks honestly about it.
And that's their get-out-of-jail-free card. Anyone who doesn't buy into their theological bullshit, they can just impugn their honesty. No, you just haven't done the work that needs to be done in order to prove that any of this stuff is true. You're not even trying. This is where your faith in fifis come into play, and I am not remotely impressed with that. That's why I need to see your facts and evidence. Nothing less will do. Just because you really like the idea, that doesn't matter. Reality doesn't care about your emotional state. Reality is what it is. Prove that your claims are aligned with actual reality by using facts and evidence to do so. Go ahead. We're waiting.
According to Romans chapter 1 verse 20, since the world began, we can see God's invisible qualities like his eternal power and divine nature just by looking at what he made.
My book says a thing. Who cares? This just assumes a lot of things not in evidence, as Allison would say. You can't just make assertions. You have to be able to back it up, and these people never ever can. That's why all of this just makes atheists roll our eyes. We're not against the idea of your God necessarily. You just haven't proven that your God is real in the first place. And with arguments like this, it's very clear that the religious just don't care. Well, of course what we believe is true. Okay, prove it. Well, we don't have to prove it because we're right. Prove it. We're right. I mean, that's all this ever is. It's just wishful thinking thrown out there by credulous idiots who couldn't care less about the facts. We care. Atheists care. They don't. And that's kind of the problem, isn't it?
Everyone believes in something. When an atheist says they don't believe in God, they usually mean they don't believe in a specific kind of God.
I don't believe in any kind of God. None of the God claims I have ever been presented with in my life make any rational sense whatsoever, nor are they supported by any evidence that anyone has ever presented. That's the problem. If you want me to believe, then you have to demonstrate to my satisfaction that what you're saying is true. I don't have any double standards. The one that we already know works, that we have already demonstrated works repeatedly, that's all I will personally ever need. And if you can't demonstrate things to my satisfaction using that standard of evidence, then you are not going to convince me. That's a you problem. It's not a me problem. I'm not the one with the unreal standards here. I'm not the one expecting things that you shouldn't be able to present. You are the one that needs to get to work. And maybe you ought to get on that pretty quick.
Like one who acts like Superman, rewarding good people and punishing bad ones.
That's the one in your stupid book, but just like Superman, that cannot be demonstrated to be actually real. If someone told me to look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane, I'd be asking for the exact same level of evidence for Superman as I am for your God. Superman isn't real, and so far as we can tell, neither is your God. If you want to convince me, then all of that work is on you. You have the burden of proof, and sadly, you're not even trying to meet it. This is why I am so unimpressed by the religious. They couldn't care less if their claims were actually true. It just makes them feel good and gives them that dopamine hit in the head, so they insist it's gotta be true, no matter how dishonest they have to be to get there. But I'm not dishonest. I'm very simple in my expectations. Put up or shut up. Pick one. Stop making a fool out of yourself.
This kind of God allows bad things to happen, like genocide or hurting kids. In the Armenian Orthodox view, God is described simply as love. So when we see love in our lives, in a child's smile, someone helping at a cancer ward, or a friend giving you a hug, we're seeing God.
Bullshit. We have seen for 4 videos now, you just making a fool of yourself. You don't get to just redefine terms and say, see, that's God. No, that's a human being doing something that your imaginary friend seems entirely incapable of doing, since there's no reason to think that your imaginary friend exists at all. That's the problem. You can't just arbitrarily redefine your terms. You have to produce evidence that your claims are factually correct, and you can't do that. This is why you look so stupid to everyone outside of your ridiculous cult. Because you are.
Love has been around forever and will never go away. So when you talk to someone who doesn't believe in God, don't just use words. Show them by living a life that's all about love, helping others, being kind to everyone, and reaching out to those who need support. That's a better way of saying, hey, look, God is real.
No, it's just a way of proving what a complete imbecile you are. Now, yes, go ahead and live a decent life. Care about other people. Leave your imaginary friend out of it. This is why the religious spend so much time making complete fools of themselves, because it's really all they can do. They are so busy living in an imaginary fantasy land in their heads that they can't handle just existing in the actual reality that they do, whether they like it or not. The only thing God here has proved is what a complete dipshit he is. He's just making everybody laugh at him. What the hell else is new, right? because they don't understand basic skepticism, and they certainly don't understand atheists. We are nothing at all like you. We're better. We're smarter. We're more rational. Maybe you ought to give that a shot. I mean, at least try. So anyhow, what did you think of all of this? Because it turned out to be a very, very long series of videos, because there's just an endless supply of complete stupidity on display. Granted, they're not making any of this for atheists, even though they're playing make-believe, because atheists are just rolling our eyes. They're just making this for their paying customers who really want to think that they have a defense against skepticism, which, sad for them, they really don't. This is all about fifis and faith, and that means absolutely nothing to anybody outside of your stupid cult. So just go and fuck off. You are the reason that religion is dying. Good job on that, I guess. Being a complete idiot isn't helping your cause. Although, since your cause is irrational and idiotic, I mean, go ahead and keep it up. It gives me more videos to point at and laugh at, and it hastens the end of the religious bullshit. So yes, by all means, go right ahead. You have my permission. Continue making a complete fool of yourself. Make the world a better place through your own extinction. At least they're doing something right, right?